Okay, in this video, I'm going to be answering another common question, which is, what computer should I be using as a photographer? To be honest, you could just get away with using your phone or iPad. If you own a subscription to Adobe's Lightroom program, then you can take your pictures from the memory card and input them into the program. Some cameras offer wireless capabilities as well, where they can transfer photos directly onto your phone or iPad through their own applications. When it comes to photo editing, you're going to need a relatively fast computer, and that can get costly. But there are options out there where you can cut the costs a little bit without sacrificing the quality. And these can be either through discounts or looking into used computers. And if you have a family or friend who knows how to build a PC, that could get it even cheaper. The reason the computer needs to be fast is because the information in the pictures you're dealing with. Briefly, your digital camera captures light and it turns it into pixels. A pixel stands for picture element and is the smallest unit of information in a picture, and 1 megapixel equals 1 million pixels. So your computer has to be powerful enough to change or alter millions of pieces of information without slowing down. What I'm going to cover in this video is the different things to look for that will tell you whether the computer is fast or not. And this applies to both laptops and desktop computers. Fast desktop computers are cheaper than fast laptops. So if you really want a laptop, be prepared to spend a good amount of money. I'm not claiming to be a computer expert at all, but I did learn enough to get the current computer I have now, which never gives me any slows for the kind of work I do. And I do both video editing and photography editing. So let's go over some key points that are going to make the computer fast. Point number 1 is CPU. This stands for Computer Processing Unit. This is the part of the computer that processes the data. A very common CPU in computers will normally be made by the company Intel and is normally seen as i4, i5, i7, and so on. In the description of the kind of CPU the computer uses, you'll also see something about how many cores it has. All this means is that the CPU has been made to handle even more processing if it has more cores. If you want a fast computer without any slows in your photo editing, then you'll want a CPU that has a label of i7 or higher. You could get away with an i5, but you'll probably find very slow startups and sometimes your editing program would crash. Point number 2 is RAM. This stands for Random Access Memory. This is the part of a computer which allows it to do more than one thing at a time. It's measured in gigabytes. Think of RAM as the computer's ability to multitask. Every computer program, including internet browsers, need a certain amount of memory in order to operate smoothly. Larger editing programs like Adobe's Lightroom or Photoshop need several gigabytes of memory to operate at all. Lightroom at this time needs at least 8 gigabytes of RAM in order to edit your pictures smoothly. So how much RAM do you need? 8 gigabytes of RAM will get you by, but it will still be slow. 16 gigabytes is going to be the next level, and that's going to make things nice and smooth. The next level above that is 32 gigabytes, and that will give you zero trouble. RAM can actually be bought separately and added to your desktop computer if you need more. My Mac computer originally came with 16 gigabytes of RAM, but for an extra $100, I bought 32 gigabytes of RAM, and it was easy to install it in my computer. If you go with a laptop, you're going to have to check to see if you can add more RAM or not. Most laptops don't allow you to do this easily. Memory. Your computer's internal memory should be enough to have all the programs you need and some room to spare. Programs like Lightroom and Photoshop can be several gigabytes just to store it in your computer, let alone use. This is on top of any files or other things you have saved to your computer. And this is different from RAM. This is going to be just your base memory in your computer. Now, this is an area you can get away with not having so much internal memory. I would not suggest using your internal memory as your only place to store files. As soon as you start to take lots and lots of pictures, this can build up to considerable amounts, and you're going to want some external memory drives. The way I would do it is when looking at a computer, make sure it has between 250 to 500 gigabytes on the low end, and then buy more external memory as you need it. I recommend Toshiba 1 terabyte hard drives or the Western Digital hard drives to store all your photos on. Now, there are 2 types of memory you're going to find. One is called hard disk drive, or HDD, and another is called solid state drive, or SSD. The more common and cheaper one is going to be the hard disk drive. This is a spinning metal disc that records all your information. The pros here are you can get a ton of memory for relatively cheap. The cons are because there are spinning discs and other moving parts, you're going to have to avoid extreme temperatures and you can't treat it too roughly. Some hard drives also are going to be noisy and need fans to cool them down. Now, solid state has no moving parts at all and is much faster than disk drives. People find solid state more reliable, faster, quieter, and easier to manage. The major downside is the price. Solid state memory is relatively new compared to the hard disk drives, and for the price of 1 terabyte of solid state, you can normally get 3 to 5 times the amount of memory with a hard disk drive. With all that said, whatever kind of memory you go with, think with large amounts of space. 500 gigabytes, 1 terabyte, or even more. If you plan to be a photographer and start taking lots of pictures, then you're gonna need a lot of space. As a photographer, your livelihood is going to be in the photos that you take. Even if you hand your pictures over to your client, you're still going to keep all the photos you take because they're ultimately yours. It's important to have a backup of all your photos just in case anything ever bad happens. Another option is to sign up for a cloud service, which will back up all your photos online constantly. There are many options out there. The one I use is called Backblaze, and for $5 a month, everything on my computer is backed up constantly. This includes my hard drives attached externally, so I don't even have to think about it. It's not a bad idea to have more than one backup too. A simple setup would be to have 2 of the same hard drives and routinely copy everything from one to the other so that you have duplicates.